Robin Hood Radio presents Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens. Michele is a longtime journalist and herself is a published playwright of several theatrical works. She's a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post, Daily Beast, and the Atlantic websites.
Well, I have just returned from a whirlwind week in London where I saw a quartet of shows. Now, last week here, you'll remember I discussed one of them, Back to the Future, whose future hope is to land on Broadway. Very possible, but I must say it came in fourth of the ones I saw. The others were completely different and unique in their own way. Now, I have probably seen Cabaret at least 3 times on stage, and then there was, of course, Bob Fosse's Oscar-winning film. But the production at the Kit Kat Club, at least as it is currently named, is probably the best, beautifully performed, hauntingly timely one that I've seen. The production won the Olivier Awards for its original stars, Eddie Redmayne and Jessie Buckley. I can only imagine, though I must say the current cast is superb, most especially Amy Lennox as the inimitable Sally Bowles. You are part of this story the minute you enter, with risque Berlin-esque performers often on stage welcoming you into the sleazy place at that horrific time. The older couple here, including the Jewish man, is nothing less than heartbreaking. What can I say? Life may not be a cabaret, but this Kit Kat revival is filled with it. Next up, I missed the Queen's funeral by a few days, but London was still filled with flowers and photos and people flocking outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, myself included one day, just as the guards happened to be changing. So then I took myself to a working-class little neighborhood called Kilbourne, to the Kiln Theater, where a show called Handbagged is playing. This piece is by Moira Buffini and has apparently played other venues over time, but I knew nothing of it, and what a delight it was. Here we have 6 super actors playing the older Queen and her younger self, the older Maggie Thatcher and her younger self, and 2 male actors hilariously playing everyone from Maggie's husband to cabinet secretaries to Rupert Murdoch. The performers move around, no set here to speak of, and occasionally winkingly acknowledge where they and we are, with lines like, "These people paid good money for this. I enjoy our interval. Sometimes it's the best part of the play. Whatever we say must stay between these 3 walls." Anyway, lines like that. Handbagged is unadorned but historical and really very funny at the same time. Even though we're crowned up to our ears, its timing is nothing less than delicious. Now, my final show was Eureka Day, written by Jonathan Spector, about political correctness at a private elementary school in Berkeley, California. It's at the Old Vic in a really fun neighborhood called The Cut. Maybe I'm the only one who doesn't know that area, but it was really a wonderful place. The audience is eating this show up every night, and there's a lot to munch on. It's very funny, all the cancel culture references up the kazoo, every word analyzed. Some would find its very absence offensive, says one character as part of the school's executive committee. If you get pulled over by the police, they won't ask if you're a transracial adoptee. Well, you get the idea. But then in the second act, it becomes serious and eerily resonant. Now, it takes place in 2017 and has to do with a mumps scare at the school and what the committee should do about vaccinations and other mandates. Yes, you could almost just switch mumps to COVID and all would fit perfectly. The big name here is Oscar winner Helen Hunt, who is excellent. Susan Kelchi Watson from This Is Us, the TV show, is also in the cast and has an even more challenging role. The other 3 characters are alternately hilarious and touching. Eureka Day is not a perfect play. Act 2 becomes a bit convoluted, but there's so much to consider. And without doubt, it has the funniest scene in London at this moment, I promise. A Zoom-style meeting wherein we witness all the comments coming in from the chatterers. You will be in stitches and just hope you don't recognize yourself. Looking back at those 3 shows, it dawns on me how topical they all were. even if by accident and timing. Anyway, I'm back in New York. I have a busy week ahead with 4 shows here, including a political one called Our Man in Santiago and the Public Theater's word-for-word take on a 1965 Cambridge debate between William Buckley and James Baldwin. And yes, Tom Stoppard's Leopoldstadt, finally, after COVID delays, and speaking for myself, after reading the 800-page bio about the playwright's complicated life, the play has just actually opened on Broadway. Anyway, it will be a busy October. Ironically, the majority of the shows up on the West End, where I just visited, come from Broadway, and now a batch arriving here began over there. There are complicated reasons for all this, and we could talk about another time. But what I am hearing is that producing in New York has become increasingly difficult, which is why so many are actually starting over there. Anyway, so Jill, let's hope for the best, at least until we start a new year.
Some might say we have started a new year.
Yes, we've definitely started a new season.
No, we've started a new year, Jewish New Year. Where have you been?
Oh, yes, we did.
Yes,
Happy
we did.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah,
So
well,
that is so good, fresh start. That's excellent.
That's right. Good time for old start. Yeah.
One of the things that I have noticed, and I don't know whether this is true or not, so by true I mean this is the way it's written about, but you were just there. There seems to be, when if I'm looking through the FT or just for a review, there seems to be a liveliness and an energy and a joie to their theater scene that I just am not feeling here. I mean, here is basically the masked, still the very.
Yeah.
They're very scared. And
well, I would agree with that. Having just been there, and the West End was very, very lively. Every time I turned a street, I said, "Oh, that's playing here. Oh, that's playing here." So there was a lot going on there, and you're right. No, there were no masks, no vaccinations. None of that is going on there anywhere really. And
so I'm just wondering, like, did you, because you have mentioned, quote, the complication of producing in New York, unquote. And again, when you and I talk about it, and I mean, I still see people here out in the air thinking that they are doing something for themselves, by not breathing. Yeah. Which is, but to do that for 2 hours, like everybody thinks that they're doing the right thing. They just are forgetting basic, body air primary things. So when you're in a place that
it's absolutely true. I mean, I still have friends who are nervous about it. I have to check up. Somebody told me, I met with the producer yesterday, and she's the one who told me that it's very, very, she's got a hit show going. And she said it would take a lot. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons why people don't want to do a play in New York right now. Not investors, not producers. It costs a lot. What used to cost $8 million now costs $12 million. I mean, that COVID is part of it. All the new things they've had to do with theaters, yes. But it's why a lot of shows are starting in England and then coming here. It's cheaper there. They get more tax breaks there. I mean, there are things like that. Energy level, I don't know. I'll see. It's my first week back.
No, that would be good.
A Strange Loop, is that already announced? It's closing.
I couldn't figure that out. I saw something about it, and I couldn't remember whether you said you thought it was closing or whether that's something that I saw intimated that it was closing, or maybe it was a closing notice. Who knows? But
I meant to check on that. Because yes, I've been kind of predicting that. I thought that was going to be a hard one, even though it just won the Tony for the best musical.
But this is where there's a bit of. I want to say two things, and even though it's thing one is you used to start shows in England anyway back in the day for a number of reasons.
Yeah, some of the big musicals.
And thing two is that there's still some dissonance between what an audience might, what a major audience. When I say major, what do I mean? I don't mean not a select few who might be into a strange loop, but like a big bunch of people who might just feel like being entertained after, which used to come under the heading of tourism. Like you do a show that the tourists would want to see, and then
that's right.
The odd New Yorker could sneak in, have a great time, and not have their their credentials questioned, their highbrow credentials questioned.
No, and believe me, there's the usual 10 shows are doing very well in New York. The Lion King's MJ 6 is doing well, but 6 also came from London, by the way.
Right, because it's the 6 wives. But my question is, do you have a sense of why, of all of them, it's just has everybody seen the Phantom of the Opera too much?
Yeah, it's time for that to go.
Okay.
And that was still, I still saw a marquee up for that, I think, in London. Yeah, I think that, you can't say that hasn't been a success. You can't say Evan Hansen or Come From Away. They did their years. Chicago, but let me tell you, there are a lot of empty theaters in New York City. Let's hope they're going to fill up. But these things that are coming, a lot of them are limited runs. A lot of the British ones coming are limited. Leopoldstadt is probably, my guess is not going to be a long run. I hope I'm wrong, but there's Gabriel Byrne. There's just a lot of them are limited. And how do you make money on a limited run?
Right? No, that's one of those things that you go home and you research when you hear it. It's just like A, how do you do that? And B, if you've got all these empty theaters, you would think, unless they're booked, but otherwise, I would sort of, and this is just going back to what your friend said about how much more complicated it is right now. I'd think that you'd keep certain things up that have an audience base.
Yeah, and by the way, and I said to her about limited runs. I said, do they really mean it when they say it's closing soon? She said, it's twofold. One is it's trying to get people to say, oh, I guess I better finally see that. So yeah, part of it is a tactic, and the other is that they just can't make enough money. I mean, look what happened with the Bob Dylan show that came from the public, and they kept trying and trying and trying. Tourists are still, I think a fun one to watch is going to be the Neil Diamond jukebox musical. That's going to be interesting. That's opening pretty soon. It's not in previews yet, but because that's a show for who? That's a show for us. That's a show for boomers. They're not going to get young people who've never even heard of Neil Diamond. And boomers, some of them are nervous about going to I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting time. It's happening everywhere. LA, they've got all the theaters are looking for new artistic directors. So it's a very active time right now in theater in all the big cities, I would say. But people are going, and that's the good news.
Stage Right or Not with Michele Willens, produced in the studios of Robin Hood Radio, robinhoodradio.com.